Chapter 28, Daydream of Darkness. The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Majora's Mask. By Ganondorf 8. October 3, 2016. Chapter 28, Daydream of Darkness. When I fought Odolway and discovered that his weak point was an oversized eyeball, I didn't think much of it at the time. Sure, it was hideous and moved of its own volition, yet it never occurred to me that it would become a consistent theme with these giant bosses. Upon the panel on Goat's back bursting open, the eyeball that it was hiding was revealed to me, scanning about the room whilst blinking at me several times. My opinion now was, why did I have to resort to hitting something that was clearly beyond anything I had ever seen in my entire life? I had seen strange things both in the world I call home and in Equestria, yet this definitely took the cake. Termina had already proven itself to be a miserable existence of a world that struggled to cope with not only impending doom, but with the loss of life occurring among its people without them ever really noticing. Now, this place had proven itself weird by featuring beings who possessed abnormalities that not even Princess Celestia could explain. This was my lot in life, I supposed, given that I was to suffer for being who I was, yet sometimes I felt things had gotten out of control. I felt my mind was slipping away into a deep subconscious from which I could never escape no matter how hard I tried. Most people my age struggled with trying to prepare for their future lives as adults. Me? I was a pony, turned human who fought against magic creatures among other kinds of beasts, all to save a world that didn't always view me in a kind manner. I don't blame humans for how they treated me when my true ambitions were uncovered. Back then, I used them as tools so that I could further my own selfish desires, actions I still condemn myself over even after being able to move on for the most part. Did I enjoy the life I had been given? While it had given me experiences others could only dream of, there were times I desired a normal existence, a life that wasn't filled with magic. Her Highness bopped me on the head to snap me from my daydreaming, I preferred to call it, looking back on certain aspects of my past, and I shook my head several times before resuming focus on the task at hand. Goat continued to lay on the ground in a paralyzed state, the eyeball on its back continued staring at me with a piercing gaze that was difficult to turn away from. The way its body landed when I rammed into its back moments ago, I could easily use my fists and punch it repeatedly, but what if it had landed on its stomach instead? I supposed I could use arrows to strike from a distance, the safer method according to Her Highness, but would those be enough? Arrows were strong without a doubt, but the raw power of a Goron was something that couldn't be dismissed either.
What are you waiting for?
Twilight asked.
I'm trying to assess the best way to attack that eyeball.
I answered.
You sound an awful lot like me just now, Sunset. Well, you've been a good mentor to me. I'm flattered that you're striving to follow my example, but now is not the best time to be doing that. I don't know how much longer Goat will stay paralyzed, but you need to act now before this opportunity gets wasted. Since his eyeball is closer to the ground, you can punch it with your fists until the creature is forced to get back up. If Goat were to land on its stomach, then you'll need to use arrows in order to hit its weak point. I suggest using fire arrows, as the magic within them should inflict extra damage. Either way, keep hitting that eyeball until it can no longer take it.
Twilight said. Strange that Her Highness said exactly what I was thinking about just now. Despite how the two of us never get to see each other, she has her obligations as a princess while I have my obligations as a student, we still remain close friends even though we didn't always act that way. We were on opposite sides because I believed I was entitled to everything without any of the effort, yet she earned everything by working hard and almost losing it through various means beyond her control. If anything, I was actually expecting myself to have developed some kind of connection with her human counterpart. I had only known Twilight Sparkle for a short period of time, but we had so much in common. We were gifted, desired knowledge, had difficult upbringings, were loners, and unfortunately became demonic monsters. It was the latter that truly gave us a strong desire to get to know each other, and I especially wanted Twilight Sparkle to know that I was there to guide her through the aftermath of what happened, even though it wasn't her fault in the first place. Maybe that's why she was the only one I could share my secrets with. I mean, Her Highness would know about them eventually, but it was Twilight Sparkle who I felt was the one I could trust the most about what I did. Both of them were the same person on the outside, yet on the inside they were like day and night, complete opposites that lead different lives, who had a common connection in that they were my friends. Just before Her Highness attempted to bop me on the head again, my daydreaming was really starting to get out of hand. I regained my focus and walked up to Goat. Its eyeball continued to watch my every move, but I ignored that and started punching it repeatedly with my fists. As each blow connected, the eyeball started getting bigger, and continued to increase in size until it looked like it was about to burst. I punched the eye one more time, resulting in Goat getting back onto its feet, resuming its rampaging around rather than take the time to turn around and attack me.
That eyeball looked like it was about to burst,
I said, wiping my brow.
I recall the same thing happening when you battled Odolway. Do you suppose powerful magic is at work here? Maybe, but it's difficult to say for certain, Sunset. We know those eyeballs are their obvious weak points, yet I'm amazed at the amount of punishment they can take. Most eyeballs can only handle one shot before it causes unbearable pain, yet what we just witnessed makes you wonder.
Twilight answered. For a brief moment, it sounded like Her Highness had a sadistic mindset regarding eyeballs, but that quickly dispersed when I realized she said it in the form of a question.
Anyway, you need to roll after Goat and continue ramming into its body so that you can expose its weak point.
Night of the second day, 36 hours remain. The howling of a wolf echoed throughout the room, catching me off guard, and indicating that nightfall had come. Had I been exploring this temple all day? It felt like it had been a lot longer than that, but either way I was going to need plenty of rest after this. Curling up into a ball, I rolled forward, my spikes protruding from my body several seconds later after Goat, who began firing lightning strikes again. As I tilted my body from side to side to avoid being electrocuted, there was something different about it. There was once a metal plate that covered its rear, but it had since fallen off, most likely after I knocked it down after ramming its back, revealing what looked like a small hole. My first instinct involved ignoring it, but that quickly proved disastrous when Goat started applying its next tactic. I eventually caught up to it and began ramming into its legs in hopes of making it crash to the ground, yet something suddenly appeared out of nowhere and exploded, my body being flung into the snow as Goat charged around the corner. As I climbed to my feet and brushed snow off of my body, I scratched my head wondering what had just happened.
Where did that come from? You were lucky, you know. What do you mean? Goat produced a bomb from that strange chute that got exposed when that metal plate fell off a few moments ago. If you had been even a smidgen closer, you would have been caught in the explosion and sustained a lot of damage.
Twilight answered.
Oh no. You don't mean? I'm not sure that I follow.
Twilight answered. You've got to be kidding me. That hole on Goat's rear is akin to... No. I'd rather not think about such a horrid thought. If that whole shoot, as Her Highness called it, is exactly that, this battle had just gotten a whole lot more disturbing. Not only did I have to worry about being blasted by falling bombs, I also had to prevent myself from throwing up to the context behind it.
Sunset? Are you okay?
Twilight asked, wondering why my expression turned to one of nausea.
Trust me. It's better for you not to know. Okay, if you say so. Anyway, those bombs will cause you to lose your spikes and reduce your speed, leaving you vulnerable to Goat's lightning attacks. You'll need to avoid those in addition to the rocks it kicks up with its hind legs.
Twilight said. It's like what Her Highness said at the beginning when she described the behavior of this mechanical bull, it has more than just the ability to shoot lightning from its horns. I wasn't looking forward to seeing what else it had in store for me. Before I decided to continue pursuing it, I needed to restore my magic power, so I walked towards the pots on the ground, smashed them with my punches, and picked them up. As I collected the remaining magic, Goat suddenly thundered around the corner, trampling over me and leaving behind another bomb that exploded right next to me. Luckily, I managed to protect myself in time by assuming a defensive position. My back became a craggy mass of rock that served as a shield, although I did suffer some slight burns, but it was better than being blasted through the wall. As I got back up, I noticed something unusual about Goat that I didn't notice before until now. There was smoke billowing from its back, and I could barely make out an electrical surge flowing about the smoke.
Is Goat starting to short-circuit? Perhaps all that punishment you're giving by ramming into it is causing a malfunction? I'm not very familiar with technology given how little of it is seen in Equestria, but what I do know from the experiences I've witnessed from the world you call home, Goat is definitely having some problems.
Twilight answered.
And I thought hitting its eyeball was the key? Maybe attacking its body is all I need. You need to attack the body in order to knock it down so that you can hit the eye. So I am right, sort of. Just do your best to avoid taking too much damage, okay? I know you've been through this kind of thing before and that you feel confident about fighting against giant monsters of otherworldly origins, but remember that you're still just a human despite having special powers. It makes me wish I were a healing fairy.
Twilight said. That was the one thing I was truly missing from this experience. When I fought against the bosses during my previous journey, I always brought along fairies just in case I was going to lose my life. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, which almost always occurred. Why didn't I bring along any fairies this time? In my mind, my previous experiences were the result of me not being ready to handle something like a giant monster, and my awful performances back then were pretty obvious. Since I now had gotten better, I believed I no longer needed to carry around fairies, but perhaps my attitude was wrong? No, I knew it was wrong. I struggled to defeat Odolwe, and now I'm struggling to defeat Goat. Perhaps the strangest thing in all of this was the fact that I wasn't ponying up during these encounters. When my health reached critical levels, my body being bashed about also helped. I gained my pony, ears and pony, tail, increasing my overall power. Not once in this journey had that occurred compared to the roughly half a dozen times it did before. Was it because equestrian magic was being blocked out by whatever force was causing it to happen here in Termina? It was an answer that eluded me, and I knew Her Highness didn't have an explanation either. Even if I could pony up, how would that work with my ability to assume other forms? Would the magic from the land of my birth override the magic contained with the masks I wear to change my shape? Again, I had no answer for that, but I believed I knew someone who did know. Deep within my subconscious, I knew he was waiting for me. The time was almost upon me to face death itself, and my chances were slim. Instead of chasing after Goat and being hit by attacks that came from nowhere, I decided to wait for it to come around before resuming the battle. That was something I had noticed that really got me thinking. This creature was being rather predictable in its movements compared with the likes of Odolwe. Did that mean it would be an easy fight? Maybe, but then I had been surprised when bombs started dropping from that hole along with the lightning from its horns. I still couldn't get over the fact that the hole represented that. Goat eventually came charging by again, but I waited for it to drop its bomb before doing anything. When it exploded a fair distance away from me, I curled up into a ball and began rolling along after it. My spikes took a while to produce from my body due to several dips and hills in the way. Why these didn't affect Goat was anyone's guess, yet I continued chasing it all while avoiding several lightning strikes. Once I caught up, I continued ramming into its legs. I did get bounced around a few times until it finally toppled over, its eye expanding out and looking directly at me.
It landed on its stomach this time. That means you can't punch the eyeball with your fists. You'll need to switch back to being a human and attack with arrows.
I grabbed my face, pulled off the Goron mask, flipped my head back hair as well, and took out the hero's bow. The arrows still contained the magic of fire, so I decided to go with it in hopes of scoring extra damage. I had no problems wasting magic, what with those infinitely respawning pots around, and since Goat's eyeball was huge, the chances of missing my target were fairly small. Aiming up at the eyeball, it started wriggling about. Much to my disgust, I fired a fire arrow, striking the eye, causing it to increase in size. I continue firing arrows, result in the eye continually expanding until Goat finally got back onto its feet.
That smoke coming from its body is getting worse. It looks like an indication that it's weakening. Sunset. If you continue with this pace, you should be able to bring it down in no time. You don't think that smoke and the electricity coming from its body will affect me, do you? No. If anything, it's making Goat feel very uneasy, although I doubt it's even noticing. It's content with just rampaging about because you freed it from the frozen prison that once contained it.
Twilight answered. She then bopped me on the head to warn me to get out of the way. I did as she asked just as Goat thundered by, dropped a bomb, and shot lightning from its horns. I avoided the lightning without any trouble, but the bomb bounced off of a small hill and landed next to me.
Sunset! Get away from that before it explodes!
Twilight shouted.
What?
I said, not realizing what had just happened. The bomb exploded and I got caught in the blast, the right side of my body being consumed in the fiery haze that resulted from the blast, and being flung into the wall with a loud thud. I struggled to get back on my feet, Her Highness looking on not in shock or horror but rather with surprise. I was expecting to have severe burns, yet upon using my hand to touch the right side of my body, I didn't feel much at all.
I don't know how you survived that, but you did, and without losing any skin among other things. I call it a miracle. Perhaps someone is looking down on you with kindness.
Twilight asked. That thought only crossed my mind for a split second. In truth, I sensed a dark aura surrounding the bomb mere moments before it exploded. I knew he had no intention of me getting blown to pieces. He wanted to fight me at my full strength, and being burned would deny him that. I chose not to bring it up to Her Highness as she would only worry.
Whatever the case, you can keep on going, right? As long as that doesn't happen again.
I answered. I put on the Goron mask again, and for once the stumbling proved to be beneficial. Goat came thundering by, but I had stumbled into the snowy slope before it had the chance to trample over me again. When the magic finished and I became Darmani, I curled up into a ball and started rolling again, my spikes producing quickly just as Goat fired another burst of lightning. I tilted to my left to avoid being shocked, ramming into its legs with plenty of force, resulting in Goat running ahead of me a little bit faster than usual. It didn't like the idea of me getting out in front, so it would speed up to ensure it retained control. I had no intention of getting ahead of it because it meant getting trampled on by those mechanical hooves. The battle was starting to take its toll on me in addition to Goat. While that bomb didn't severely injure me, the dark aura didn't entirely prevent me from taking any damage, so I knew I was beginning to lose steam. Smoke and electricity continued spewing forth from Goat's body, and that meant it was close to finally being defeated. These next few minutes would determine which of us would make it out alive. Goat continued rampaging forward until it came to a stop a short distance away before turning around in a half circle and firing lightning from its horns. This was the first time I had ever seen it stop like that and attack by facing me, but I wasn't about to let it gain the upper hand. A small hill several meters in front of me would provide an opportunity to attack it from above, but I needed to weave my way over to it. I stopped rolling, my spikes retracted, and I turned slightly towards the hill knowing that I needed to jump off it. Before I could continue, a jolt of lightning traveled right through my body, the shock was enough to make my heart beat faster than usual, and I uncurled my body.
Are you alright?
Twilight asked, concerned as always.
I'm fine,
I answered, gritting my teeth as a second lightning strike went through me followed by a third. My heart was beating rapidly due to the constant barrages of lightning, but I had to keep going knowing that I needed to finish what Magpie started.
I have to defeat this monster, otherwise the Gorons will die.
I began rolling forward but was quickly stopped by another lightning strike, my body collapsing to the ground. Goat was serious in wanting me to die, but I had to keep going even though it meant moving closer towards what could be my own death.
I'm going to chance it. You can't be serious. Just watch me.
Was I allowing my anger to cloud my judgment? Perhaps, yet it was a necessary pleasure. The image of Maud's ghost began flashing through my mind, tears trickling down her expressionless face, no words came forth from her gaping mouth. I promised that I would save her people, and that was what I intended to do. Curling into a ball just as another lightning strike went through me, I began rolling forward towards Goat, dodging the next strikes, my spikes protruding from my body, and going off the small hill, crashing into its side, causing it to crash, but not before it flung a piece of rock that knocked me down. The injury wasn't serious. A rock to the face was severe in certain circumstances, but I managed to get up and punch Goat's eyeball repeatedly with my fists before it got back up and began rampaging around. Rolling after it, I discovered it had one last measure as a means of desperation, namely, causing sharp rocks to fall from on high. One such rock landed right in front of me, my speed coming to an immediate stop.
It's starting to drop stalactites. Are they going to be a problem? Judging from the thickness of the one that stopped you, you won't be able to roll through them when your spikes come forth. Instead, you'll have to avoid them whenever they drop down, otherwise you'll be a sitting duck.
Twilight answered.
How long do you suppose this will keep going on for? I honestly have no idea, Sunset. I'm surprised that your punches and fire arrows haven't caused the eyeball to burst from such impacts, but perhaps it's much more resilient than we originally suspected? All you can do is keep on ramming into it with your body and attacking its weak point until it finally goes down.
Twilight answered. She then bopped my head. It was becoming her means of getting me to pay attention, to warn me that Goat was about to go by. I walked off to the side and waited. Goat thundered by several seconds later, dropping a bomb before continuing on. Curling up into a ball, I began to roll forward only to be stopped by a stalactite that suddenly fell down from the ceiling. This caught me by surprise, allowing Goat to strike me once again with lightning, but it wasn't enough to deter me from chasing it. It did get my heart beating fast, however, so I rolled around the stalactite and kept up the pace before my spikes appeared. More and more stalactites continued falling, turning the battle into a dodging competition, but I persevered by focusing on Goat while tilting my body to get around the additional obstacle. When I caught up with Goat, I rammed into its legs while avoiding the rocks it was kicking up with its hind legs. I didn't care about getting hurt. My only concern was to defeat it and save the Gorons from being wiped out from the cold of winter. In my mind, I wondered how Starlight Glimmer felt about the damage she had caused in the name of pulling pranks. I certainly had plenty of words to say to her once I had freed the remaining giants. Speaking of them, I had this feeling that I knew who the next one was going to be. If my hunch was correct, I would be speaking with the significant other to Celestia. Ramming into Goat one more time, it collapsed to the ground, its eyeball dangling out and swaying back and forth as a result of the impact. The eyeball was in the right position for me to punch it with my fists, so I began to do so repeatedly. It certainly was better than shooting it with arrows, until Goat got back up only to turn around and begin running after me, or rather stumbling about.
What is it doing? I think you damaged its eyeball enough to cause it to lose control.
Twilight answered. I started running away from Goat as fast as my legs could carry me. It wasn't much considering my current body wasn't built for speed, and Her Highness looked behind to see what kind of behavior it was exhibiting. It was flailing about its head in a maddening fashion, legs stammering about as it attempted to move in its bid to trample over me.
I suggest you hurry up, Sunset. What do you think I'm doing? Not fast enough. I may not be fast with this body, but I can manage,
I said. I had no intention of turning my head to see the maddening rampage of Goat. The sound it was making behind me was more than enough to pique my curiosity. At first, it looked like Goat was about to run me down due to getting within mere inches of me, but then it suddenly changed direction, and plunged right into the wall. I stopped to see what was going on, and the only glimpse I got was Goat colliding with the wall, its mechanical body sprawling about. The impact caused rocks to start falling down on top of it, and it began to struggle freeing itself, but to no avail. As each rock continued to pile on top of one another, Goat's attempts at freeing itself weakened until I could no longer see it, the rocks having buried it alive. I looked up at the ceiling thinking that I too would become buried alive. The impact Goat made was enough to cause a massive cave-in, but luckily the rocks were only falling around the area it crashed in, leaving me to breathe a sigh of relief. And yet, I felt bad knowing that it had perished in a rather undignified fashion. I was expecting it to fall apart due to sustaining too much damage. Its defeat by being buried alive felt empty of sorts. Eventually, the rocks stopped falling from the ceiling, yet I wasn't about to take any chances. Slowly, I inched my way over to the rock pile that had formed, and tapped my foot against it to see if Goat would suddenly come out and attack me once again. Nothing happened, so I tried one more time. Again, nothing happened. The battle had ended with me as the victor, despite how it looked like Goat would make one final comeback. A bright light then started to form near where Goat had crashed, and I could make out what appeared to be its head, or rather its mask, floating above the light. A giant heart appeared nearby.
You did it, Sunset. That was way too intense,
I said, dropping down onto my butt and exhaling heavily.
I'm sad that Goat had to die in such a horrible manner. I can understand how you feel about it. I've never seen anything like that, but remember that it was a mechanical monster that threatened to kill you. I doubt it had an actual soul other than what may have been inside,
Twilight said.
What do you mean? You see that floating mask over there, right?
Twilight asked. I nodded my head.
When you defeated Odolwe, his mask appeared above a circle of light, and when you picked it up, we were transported to a strange place where we encountered one of the 4 giants who protect this land.
Her Highness paused for a few moments before realizing that the giant was our old teacher, or rather, Principal Celestia.
Celestia was trapped inside Odolwe until she was freed when you collected his mask. Another one of the giants was sealed inside Goat and has been freed. No, they weren't sealed into the bosses themselves, but rather the masks. How do you suppose Starlight Glimmer sealed them like that? She used powerful magic that I can't even begin to fathom. Do you suppose the next giant is Vice Principal Luna? Maybe, but we won't know for sure until we make contact with the giant,
Twilight answered. She started to float towards Goat's floating mask before she turned around and noticed I was still sitting down on the ground.
Sunset? Come on. We need to collect that mask and meet the second giant.
Again, I refused to move from my spot, and Her Highness floated before me, a mad expression spread across her face.
What's wrong with you? Why are you being so stubborn all of a sudden? You know what's going to happen once we've finished our business with Luna, don't you? Oh. That encounter with Ganondorf. I feel like I'm going to die. No need for you to think like that, Sunset. Twilight. He is far more powerful than you can even begin to imagine. I've been dreading this moment ever since he revealed that he intends to challenge me once again. In our last encounter, I did everything I could and even used my full power in hopes of overcoming him,
I said, standing up on my feet.
My efforts were in vain. Nothing I did even fazed him, and in turn he left me within an inch of my life. The only reason I lived was because he willed it according to him.
I slowly started walking towards Goat's mask, even though my heart wanting me to turn back.
It was like I was facing death itself. Never in my entire time had I been so scared of anything. You've got me on your side. You really don't get it, do you? No, I don't. Alright, Twilight. I'll keep going because we need to restore the world I call home to normal, but you will soon realize that my words are the truth. Ganondorf most likely has every intention of killing me because last time, it was all a test, a game where he was in complete control. This time, he won't be holding back.
I said. My words didn't seem to resonate within Her Highness' heart, but she would soon realize that she hadn't seen true evil. The villains who aspired to conquer Equestria, myself included, were insignificant specks compared to the likes of Ganondorf. The first thing I did was grab the heart container that appeared after Goat crashed into the wall. Picking it up gave me the familiar warm feeling that occurred whenever I grabbed one, although this time it wasn't making me feel better. The upcoming contest truly frightened me to my very core. Once I felt ready to continue, I walked into the light, and picked up the mask Goat had worn, giving me 2 of them. I had no idea why I needed to collect these masks, but I wasn't about to question something beyond my realm of understanding. To think that an innocent spirit Vice Principal Luna was once trapped inside without a means of escaping. Suddenly, I changed back to normal without taking the Goron mask off. Was it the power of the Circle of Light that caused it? Why would that be? I assumed that Maud's spirit would be a welcoming sight since she was a heroine who tried to save her people from being exterminated. Perhaps there was much more to this, yet again it was beyond my own understanding to comprehend. Goat's mask floated upward before I blacked out when everything turned white. Moments later, I awoke to find myself in a familiar place. It was exactly the same as the location I encountered Principal Celestia, yet the colors were slightly different. This time, there was a blue hue surrounding me as opposed to the green hue from before, but I had no time to admire this change. I gulped before looking ahead at a large figure who was standing beyond several waterfalls, arms held out as though they were trying to bring down the heavens.
I am free from the dark mask that kept me imprisoned.
Even though I couldn't see her, the tone in her voice was obvious in that I was speaking to Vice Principal Luna.
There is no doubt in my mind that it was you who saved me, you who can change your shape through the magic of masks.
The giant lowered her arms and began walking forward, her hair flowing about like a beautiful veil, her footsteps soft and delicate but with tremendous power coming from them. When she got close enough, I could see that she was indeed Vice Principal Luna, and much like her sister from before, she wore an identical swimsuit, a dark blue one that looked like I was staring into the moonlight of nightfall symbols adorned on her face and arms, a powerful aura rotating around her body. There was no doubt that she possessed great power, as did Celestia, yet something bothered me about all of this. If the giants were so strong, how was Starlight able to imprison them within dark masks? Shouldn't they have prevented such a thing from happening by overpowering her?
You remind me of the first giant I rescued. We 4 giants share much in common but also possess our own unique powers.
Vice Principal Luna said.
Yet you couldn't prevent yourselves from being sealed away. The one who wears the dark mask that wrought great havoc upon the land that we 4 were sworn to protect is not what she seems to be. She believes that her dreams will become a reality, yet I fear she is playing with a force beyond her perception. What she wears will no doubt destroy her unless it is cast aside into the darkness from whence it came. You, who possess a similar power to her, must save not only this world, but the one who brought destruction.
Vice Principal Luna said.
You want me to help her? Correct. Why should I do that?
I asked. Vice Principal Luna said nothing, leading me to believe that she either didn't want to answer or didn't know it.
You will learn the answer from the next one of us 4 who remains trapped within a dark mask. I can also sense a powerful dread coming from your heart, small human, a dread that threatens to shatter your mind. Someone is waiting for you. Someone whose power vastly exceeds my own and that of the others. I do not know what this person is planning, but you must be cautious unless the darkness consumes your very soul.
Vice Principal Luna answered.
Do you know anything else about this person? This someone has lived far beyond the limits of mortals and possesses an arcane power that was created by the Ancient Ones. I suspect that this is knowledge you already know, but what you do not is that the person wields a secret known only to them.
Vice Principal Luna answered. While it wasn't exactly the kind of information I was hoping for, at least she acknowledged that she was aware of Ganondorf's presence. I also learned that she and the other giants had little power compared to him. Luna then looked upwards at the sky, and for a moment, I thought I could see several tears trickling down her face.
You poor child. Hey. I cannot explain why, but fate conspires against you. Doesn't it always? Ah, so you are aware that your life hangs by a thread and that you have no control over it.
Vice Principal Luna asked. I slowly nodded my head and she responded by shedding several more tears.
I would wish such a fate on you, small human, yet it has been predetermined long ago. What happens to you when the one who awaits is finished? You must continue to awaken the remaining giants until all of us are free once again.
She then started walking backwards, indicating that my time with her had concluded.
When you awaken the final giant, all of us shall appear before you to give you our one true desire before you must call us. Desire? What desire? I cannot answer that.
I knew Vice Principal Luna was going to say that. Much like Celestia before her, she was being rather cryptic with her words, a fact that I had long gotten used to. I didn't know why these worlds were so bent on providing confusing information that only served to confuse those who were trying to save them from dark forces. Why not just come out and say it and not come across as being deceitful? Not only did I need to figure out where the 4 giants had to be summoned, but also what their one desire was supposed to be. Luna said they would reveal it to me when they were all awakened, yet that was something I couldn't trust her on. She then continued walking backwards until her appearance disappeared into a veil of shadow, leaving me with more questions than answers. She mentioned that I needed to help out Starlight, the one who caused this problem in the first place. Why would I help someone like that? My mind started to become conflicted with mixed feelings. As a heroine, my goal was to help those who needed it. As someone who was once a monster, Starlight needed guidance to save her from the dark path she had chosen. Despite everything she had done in her bid to cause mischief, she had much in common with me, and I wasn't about to deny it. That's when something else Luna said struck a nerve. What did she mean by
she is playing with a force beyond her perception?
Was she trying to suggest that Starlight wasn't in control of her actions and that something else had been pulling the strings? It sounded rather far-fetched, but then it was a possibility given how Ganondorf's surrogate mothers brainwashed his former second-in-command into acting against her own will. Part of me wanted her to pay for all she had done, but another part wanted me to be sympathetic. Everything suddenly went white as I blacked, and I believed that I would be sent back to either the entrance of Snowhead Temple, or at the very least, the base of the mountain so that I could witness the return of spring. With Goat's defeat, the harsh winter that plagued the region had finally come to an end, and that meant warmer weather would soon appear. No doubt the Gorons would feel relief knowing their lives had been spared, and Maud could now rest in peace in this world knowing her final request had been fulfilled. Unfortunately, I didn't appear in either of the 2 places I assumed I would return to. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in front of what looked like a ruined fortress. I could tell that it was ancient and foreboding. There were several holes in the wall resulting most likely from being breached by either powerful soldiers, magic, or even catapults that fired strong projectiles. The front door was mostly missing with a small piece hanging on by a single nail that looked ready to snap off at any moment. Candles adorned either side of the door, a sign that someone lived here, but then who would live in such squalor? I looked down at the ground and noticed red stains scattered about, stains of blood from a bygone era. This place didn't exist in Termina. It never did. It was just like what I experienced at the conclusion of my previous journey. This place was a ruined kingdom that must have flourished long ago, but was now nothing more than a relic of the past that had been forgotten.
Where are we?
Twilight asked.
I'm not sure, but it's obvious why we're here. Ganondorf. Who else? He brought us here because he wants to face me again, but I'm not sure where he is exactly.
I answered. A dark aura permeated throughout the area, an aura so powerful that it was impossible to sense the presence of anyone. Ganondorf was somewhere in this desolate place, but where he was remained unknown.
There's no telling when he will make his presence known, so we should try to see if we can return to Termina before he finds us. I've noticed that you don't have your masks. What?
I exclaimed. I quickly fumbled behind my back to see if Her Highness was bluffing, but she wasn't. All of my masks had disappeared.
At least you still have your weapons, yet I find it strange that your masks have been taken away from you. Does Ganondorf not want you to assume your other forms? In any case, there's nothing we can do about it right now, Sunset.
Twilight said.
Already this is becoming my worst nightmare. No need to start freaking out.
Twilight said. That was easy for her to say, she wasn't the one who had to fight Ganondorf. At that moment, it began to rain heavily thanks to the dark clouds that swirled above us, and the only place we could go was inside.
We must seek shelter from this rain. Once we're inside, we can figure out something that can help us get back to where we need to be.
Knowing that there was no other choice, I ran inside the fortress before I would get drenched by the heavy downpour. The interior of the fortress was even worse than what it was like on the outside. The roof had numerous holes strewn about, allowing the rain to come in and create puddles of water, yet this was nothing compared to the large cobwebs that had skeletal remains dangling from them in an eerie harmony. Several support beams had fallen down from the ceiling, the lighting was poor, bloodstains were commonplace, and everywhere you looked, the stench of death could be sensed all around. Truly this place was nothing short of being desolate. The dark aura that I felt outside was even stronger inside. Perhaps a reminder that this place was once home to many before they succumbed to whatever brought about their mutual destruction. What could have done this? It was an answer I hoped never to find out.
I guess we should walk forward. There's something off-putting about this place, and I don't mean the remnants. It's the evil that pervades everything. I've never felt such a strong evil like this before. You get used to it after a while.
After what I experienced in Hyrule and so far in Termina, I had long gotten adjusted to being surrounded by darkness, and I wasn't just talking about Ganondorf. Everywhere I traveled in both worlds, darkness could be felt all around, no place was safe from its tainted maw, waiting for the right moment to pounce on innocent people. Most people would have succumbed after being exposed to so much, yet I was able to persevere, but not through normal means. Despite how much I've changed, I retained something that could never be gotten rid of and would forever remain a part of me. My heart was tainted by evil. I read about it out of curiosity in a book Her Highness let me borrow by sending it through the portal. Those who are tainted by darkness become less affected by it, a blessing but also a curse, a double-edged sword if you will. The blessing is that you can last longer than most in certain situations, the curse is that it's a reminder of the kind of person you once were before deciding to change things. Nothing can change what I did in the past, but I can learn from my mistakes and apply them to ensure others don't make them. The last thing anyone needs is another evil version of me wanting to conquer two worlds. That's why Twilight Sparkle needed my guidance. She went through the same thing that happened to me, except against her own volition. I wanted the power contained within the crown Her Highness once wore, her human counterpart didn't want so much magical knowledge. I will do for her that couldn't be done for me until much later in life. I'll make sure she never succumbs to the temptation of wanting power above everything else. Walking over to a door at the end of the room, I opened it and entered a long hallway. Candles adorned down the path on both walls provided the only means of light. Numerous doors could be seen indicating something could be behind each of them, the path ending at a much larger door. While it would be obvious to immediately head towards that one, my heart compelled me to searching the additional rooms in case something was waiting in one. Each room contained nothing but ruins, remnants of a forgotten people, and puddles of water courtesy of the rain coming through the damaged ceiling. At one point, I opened a door and got soaked by water, leaving Her Highness to laugh at my misfortune, a frowned expression on my face as I wiped away the water with my hand. This would happen a second time, prompting me to clench my hand into a fist, the anger burning inside of me, but not enough for me to lose control. When it happened a third time, I decided to just go along with it and laughed because I needed to remain positive knowing what laid ahead. After searching each of the rooms to no avail, I opened the much larger door at the end of the hallway, the rust on the hinges giving off a terrible noise. This next room was rather furnished, what with stained glass windows. Some had been smashed, yet it was still ruinous, a painful reminder of what might be were I to fail in my task of restoring the world I called home back to normal. The various tables and chairs strewn about what remained of them told me that this room must have been a gathering place for those who once resided here, yet now looked like something lost in time. Her Highness was in sheer delight upon seeing the contents of this room. Her love of knowledge caused her to react in the manner I had come to expect from her, freaking out over the possibilities of wanting to find out more about what this fortress once was in its glory days. That's when she noticed I stopped and was wondering why I did that.
Sunset? Is something wrong? He's here.
I answered in a quiet manner.
Who's here?
Twilight asked. She saw the look in my eyes and that it was in the direction of something in front of me. When she turned to see what I was looking at, she had the same look in her eyes and quickly hid behind my hat. Sitting there on a throne with a sword in his lap was Ganondorf himself, a cruel smile across his face. The aura of darkness surrounding him made it difficult for me to breathe when it began to flare up from him.
I've never felt such an evil force like this before, Sunset.
Twilight said from behind my hat.
This is nothing. What do you mean? He's holding his power back because he feels that he doesn't need to use it. If he were exerting the true extent of what he's capable of, you and I would be dead from being choked from that aura.
I answered.
I have been waiting for you, child.
Ganondorf said, his hand sliding down to the sword on his lap before gripping it tightly.
Why bring us here? This place. it is or once was the kingdom of Hyrule until it fell into ruin. The Triforce kept the hearts of the people strong as they strove to live out their pitiful existences, but when the power was lost to them, despair soon ruled over them, madness consumed their thoughts, and soon they were no more. Without the golden power, this kingdom became a shadow, a forgotten land that no one can remember what it once was.
Ganondorf answered.
You did this, didn't you? The Triforce was always destined to be wielded by me, and when I finally claimed all 3 pieces, I was banished from the land by those who believed they could live on without that given unto them by the great goddesses who created everything.
Ganondorf answered. He clenched his other hand into a fist and the mark of the Triforce appeared in his hand, glowing in an ethereal light.
By banishing me, they lost the light that protected them. Without it, Hyrule fell into ruin and became what you see before you.
Ganondorf stood up from his throne and continued smiling that cruel smile.
I was their savior and they forsook me in favor of their own misguided ways. So you killed them? No. They killed themselves when the darkness the lights drove away for ages consumed them. Had they accepted my dominion, my rule, they would have lived an existence where my word was law. A shame their own ignorance cost them everything.
Ganondorf answered, taking several steps forward, drawing out his sword from its sheath, throwing it aside. It landed with a thud in the shadows and stopping at the base of the steps that lead up to the throne he sat on.
You wonder why I brought you to this place, child? The worlds that you call home could one day become like this. Are you threatening Equestria?
Twilight asked, flying out from behind my hat.
So? The one who is your mentor was also brought into this. How amusing. Wait. How do you know who I am? I know everything, little fairy, or should I refer to you as the Princess of Friendship? I have known of your very existence for a long time and everything that you've experienced since the day you were brought into your world. There is nothing that is beyond my reach, a testament to my power.
Ganondorf answered. Her Highness was unable to respond initially, but that didn't matter as he wasn't finished speaking just yet.
You possess much power, little fairy, but your beliefs are weak-minded much like yourself. Power is a force everyone aspires for and nothing will deter them from it. You can never change what lurks within their hearts, the desire for power no matter the cost. Friendship will always triumph over evil. The light has been offended by the darkness, it seems. What is that supposed to mean? Perhaps the answer will come to you in time, but I grow weary of this pointless babbling.
Ganondorf answered. He then looked at me with a gaze that pierced my very soul. I knew what was about to happen and it was something I had been dreading for so long.
Sunset Shimmer. Long have I been waiting for the chance to test your strength. I hope that you have grown stronger since our previous contest. My expectations of you have not changed since then, so now show me your power.
I drew my sword and shield in response, yet he merely laughed at my actions.
Did you not hear me, child? This is my power.
I answered.
Do not feign ignorance to me, child.
Ganondorf said. He saw right through my deception and I knew that my attempt to fool him had failed.
Show me the form that you assumed before out of desperation, and perhaps the ascension that you achieved.
I wasn't surprised at the revelation of his knowledge, the form I became in order to save Twilight Sparkle from herself during the friendship games. It was a form I had only ever achieved once, and that was because I used the magic of my friends in order to ascend to a form that could match up to Midnight Sparkle, the evil twisted creature that Twilight Sparkle became upon unleashing the magic she had stolen. I had no idea that I was capable of becoming Daydream Shimmer. The name was given to me by my fellow students as I assumed I would simply pony up and having an aura surrounding me or something. Magic in the world I called home was different than in Equestria. It continued confusing me even when it looked like it was starting to become easier to figure out. Ganondorf wanted me to become Daydream Shimmer? Was it even possible? I didn't have the proper conditions to ascend, so would I fail to live up to his expectations? I looked on at Her Highness, who looked back with a worried concern on her face. I felt bad knowing that she got dragged into this because of me. No matter what happened, I had to make sure that she remained safe. The ponies of Equestria needed her. She was their guiding light. I was a fallen angel to them. I was important only to a chosen few, the masses had forgotten I even existed because of how long it had been.
In Termina, that part of me was blocked by a powerful force. But in this wretched place, you are not restrained and can unleash your strength.
Before, I struggled to control my transformed state because of being hurt to the point of death, and almost losing my life several times in the process. I eventually controlled that power through sheer will and wanting to defeat Ganondorf Tyrek at the time, but would I be able to remain as my true self if I ascended? I didn't want to become the she-demon, the fallen angel that was the result of my desire for power, the very desire that Ganondorf wants for me. In my heart, I knew that unleashing my full potential would mean fulfilling his twisted desires of wanting me to abandon everything in exchange for becoming the strongest I could be, but there was no other choice. I had to briefly cross the line between light and dark to survive without trapping myself in the dark side. Even if I were to become Daydream Shimmer, would I be able to control such a form given my past struggles? The only way to know for certain was to ascend. Closing my eyes and concentrating, my pony, ears and tail appeared. It felt like forever since they last appeared before I took a defensive stance against Ganondorf. He merely laughed in response and walked forward, sword raised, eyes deadlocked on me. I didn't want to do this because I knew deep down that he too powerful, but I had to face him to stop myself from being afraid of his presence. In an instant, he dashed towards me before thrusting his sword against my shield. The amount of force he exerted almost cost me my balance, yet I managed to persevere and held my own as I struggled to push him back. Since my shield had been damaged earlier when it got frozen by the Wizrobe's magic, it was already starting to buckle under the pressure, and that meant it wouldn't last for long. I had to preserve it, otherwise I'd be defenseless, but Ganondorf wasn't about to give me that chance. Using his free hand, he batted away my shield. It clanked about on the ground upon landing, and then he disappeared before reappearing right behind me. With one swift stroke, he slashed me in the back before quickly darting around me and kicking me in the stomach. The blow knocked the wind right out of me. As I clutched my stomach, he followed through with another sword strike on my chest, and then a kick to my face. It really hurt, sending me flying into a table that broke apart from my weight.
Come now. You are not even trying. What makes you say that?
I asked, picking myself up from the now splintered table.
I know that you are more powerful than this, child, and yet you are afraid that you won't be able to control such a power? Heh? Why would you want to cripple yourself instead of embracing the truth that even now remains blinded to your eyes? Power is the driving force behind everyone's actions. To resist such a temptation is the same as admitting that you are weak and worthless.
Ganondorf answered. Before I could respond, he kicked me in the stomach a second time, followed by slashing me across my stomach and back using an advanced sword technique.
This is all too easy for me. Ha! Such arrogance!
I shouted as I slowly got back up after landing on my stomach.
There is no arrogance in my words, child, namely truth. I had high hopes that you would achieve your more powerful form, and yet you disappoint me by fighting me with such an inferior power. Yes, I am well aware that you are able to ascend to a more grandeur state, but perhaps it is simply too much for you to understand.
Ganondorf said. He lowered his sword before turning his attention towards Her Highness, a cruel smile once again appearing on his face.
What you need is convincing, child. I seem to recall that you transform whenever rage consumes your very being. What are you getting at? The world that you come from. The real one that you were born into. Perhaps I should visit this world for myself, and conquer it as I have done with Hyrule among other realms out there, or perhaps I should allow it to burn to ashes by flooding it with the darkness that resides in the hearts of your kind.
Ganondorf answered.
I highly doubt you can do that. You forget yourself, child. My power is far beyond your mind's comprehension.
Ganondorf said. He raised his hand and it burst into dark flames. The light emanating from it was both pretty and terrifying. I wasn't surprised that the flames didn't hurt him. He was one with the very power that drove him to consume as much of it as possible.
I know that you desire to go back to the place where you were born, and I can send you there by simply conjuring up a portal. His hand then apparently slashed through the air and a portal appeared, the same kind that Twilight Sparkle created, revealing Canterlot in all its glory. Equestria is right there for you to return to, but will it be the same way that it was when you left it?
Ganondorf asked. My desire to go back home quickly shattered when I realized what he was talking about. He had every intention of seeing my world consumed with darkness and quite possibly the extinction of every pony. Her Highness looked at me, and it didn't take a genius to realize that this couldn't be allowed to happen.
Show me your true strength, child. Show me, and I shall spare your world my fury, but if you refuse, then their deaths shall be on your hands. You shall forever be known as their butcherer. Even if I wanted to, I can't do it. I don't have the magic of my friends to draw from to achieve that particular form. So be it then. Your world shall be condemned through your actions.
Ganondorf said, his eyes shifting towards Her Highness again.
Not only the world of your birth but the world that you reside in now, both will not survive my wrath. And, I shall begin with the one who is held with such high esteem.
He started walking forward and I knew he was going straight for Twilight. I tried to stop him, but he batted me aside with his hand.
You will become my first victim, princess, and the child shall forever be tormented with the fact that she failed to save you when you needed her the most. No. Don't you dare touch her!
I shouted at the top of my lungs.
Your attempts at a threat are meaningless to me. You lack the power to do anything, and so I shall allow you to watch your mentor die a slow, painful death. When she is dead, I shall bring the others who mean so much to you, and they shall also die by my hands.
Ganondorf said. He took another step towards Twilight, and I responded by getting in front of him to protect her from harm.
You bore me, child.
He grabbed me by my tunic's collar, lifted me up effortlessly, punched me in the stomach several times before finishing up with a sword slash across my chest and tossing me aside where I landed by my shield.
Why would you want to kill me?
Twilight asked.
Because you are the key. Key? Key to what? All will become clear soon enough. You're not making any sense. That is because you cannot see beyond the veil. Once you can see things that your eyes cannot, everything will become clear. It is a shame you will not live to understand.
Ganondorf said. He grabbed Her Highness and started squeezing her tiny body before he stopped and turned his head around slightly.
Now the true contest begins.
I was standing up once again, blood trickling down my stomach from the wounds he inflicted on me, my body covered with bruises, and a hateful expression on my face. The anger within me had reached a boiling point and there was no chance of me calming down. What Ganondorf just did to Twilight had pushed me over the edge, and he was going to pay dearly for it with every fiber of my being. Images suddenly flashed through my mind, reminders of what I had been through. I saw Her Highness, my friends, my peers, all looking at me with scared expressions. I could hear them calling me a monster for losing control and allowing my temper to consume my every waking thought. No. I couldn't lose control. I'm not the same person I once was who struck fear into the hearts of everyone around me. I was their friend, a fellow Wondercold, a member of the family. In an instant, my body relaxed and I began calming myself down, yet the magic continued flowing into me from somewhere. My body suddenly glowed in a bright light, my tunic replaced with the elegant gown I wore when I had to stop Midnight Sparkle, wings of light appearing from my back, and my hair lifted itself up before it all finished with the accessories I gained.
Sunset? Is that you?
Twilight asked, floating over to check me out.
I don't know how I managed to become this form without our friends, but I've given Ganondorf what he wanted.
I answered.
So this is the Daydream Shimmer form you mentioned when I returned after that time travel incident. I'm just surprised that I'm in control right now. In the past, whenever I ponied up, I lost control and didn't care about my own well-being. Instead, my only desire was to use my sudden increase in magic to overcome whatever was blocking my path.
I said.
You're in control right now. That's because I eventually mastered having so much magic all at once. So this is your ascension?
Ganondorf asked, my attention finally focusing back on him.
I can sense that your power has increased exponentially, a far cry from the weaker form that you used mere moments ago, but it also proved that power is something you strive for despite denying it.
He took a step forward before assuming what I believed was a fighting stance where his sword was raised in an arc-like fashion.
Perhaps there is still a possibility to abandon your current path and embrace your new power. Then again, this is merely the tip of what you are capable of. You can go even further beyond what I see standing before me. Shut up. Ha, such boldness is most unbecoming of you, child. Perhaps I shall teach you what it means to respect those superior to you.
Ganondorf said. He raised his sword in an effort to strike me, but I quickly moved forward, slashed him in the stomach, and moved back in the span of a couple of seconds.
What? How were able to move with such speed? That must have been luck giving you sympathy. That's your reasoning? I guess you're not as astute as you think.
I said. I repeated the same maneuver, Ganondorf again being surprised by what I did. In fact, I was also surprised at how fast I had moved in those split seconds. Had my transformation to Daydream Summer made me so fast he couldn't keep up with me? Was it the only thing that had changed, or had I become even stronger?
You wanted to see this form and now you've got it. You merely caught me by surprise. Maybe, but I think you're lying to me. Such arrogance. Like what you were doing to me earlier?
I asked. My words reacted to Ganondorf in the manner I was expecting from him. He swung his sword forward much faster than he had done previously, yet he connected with nothing but thin air as I had since moved around behind him.
Maybe I've become stronger than you? I don't mean to brag, but you are having some slight trouble keeping up with me.
I knew not to underestimate him as he still hadn't shown me the full extent of his magic. I also knew not to anger him, otherwise there was no telling what he would do.
You? Stronger than me? Do not delude yourself into such thinking. Then why not use more of your magic? What I have will suffice. If that's the case, then allow me to show you some of my magic. I won't get the chance to use it again after I return to Termina, so I might as well use it now and see what it can do against someone whose heart has been poisoned by evil.
I said. Cupping my hands together, I fired a beam of light that struck Ganondorf, and pushed him back several meters. I knew my magic was powerful, yet I wasn't expecting it to be that potent.
Your magic burns of the light. I know you better than that, Ganondorf. The light doesn't affect you all that much because you're surrounded by so much darkness. If anything, all I did was give you a minor graze that shouldn't even be an issue for someone like you.
I said. My words again triggered a nerve, and the Dark Lord charged at me, swinging his sword and crashing it against my shield. He showed no signs of relenting as blow after blow collided against the metal frame of my shield, yet I was holding my own thanks to my shield becoming stronger as a result of becoming Daydream Shimmer. Of course, I knew that I couldn't rely on playing a defensive game. I had no idea how long this transformation would last, so I needed to wrap things up before I wind up being vulnerable. With a swing of my sword, it too had been powered up. I pushed Ganondorf back before following up with several slashes across his armored chest. Each blow continued to push him back as he struggled to counterattack, and eventually he found himself against the wall, the tip of my sword inches from his throat.
Yes. This is exactly what I was expecting from you, child. I know, and that's why I'm not going to end your life. Because by doing so, you would be tainted with darkness, more than what currently lurks within your heart. You have strived so much to move on from your tortured past, but you can never hope to break free from that which has defined you.
Ganondorf said. He grabbed my sword and pushed it away, causing me to stumble back a few paces before he moved away from the wall.
That is why you should abandon the notion of wanting to fight in the name of justice. I can see the conflict that boils within, a force that struggles to want to embrace power, but it is held back by a desire to move on. I'm not going to listen to you. You secretly desire more powerful magic to further your own ambitions, yet you deny this because you do not wish to hurt those who trust you. Deep within your soul, you still wish to become just like the princess, one who has ascended to a form only a few chosen could ever achieve.
Ganondorf said. He walked over and placed his hand on my shoulder. The vile twisted darkness that was his power began to clash against the magic of friendship.
It is something that has been gnawing at you for a long time. You may think that you have accepted your fate, but you still desire to become a princess. That's something I know I'm not ready for. Light chooses to deny her destiny. How amusing. I'll become a princess when I've earned that right, and nothing you or anyone else says will change that. You've tried this trick on me before, Ganondorf, using my own feelings and turning them against me by filling them with malice.
I said. I looked down at my hands, a fear causing me to tremble upon the realization that he was right about one thing. I did desire stronger magic and hoped that I could go beyond what Her Highness was capable of.
I won't deny it any longer. I do want stronger magic, to be able to ascend in a different way, but not without my friends by my side. Gaining new magic means nothing without them. Then you can still be turned. What do you mean? The desire for wanting stronger magic is an admission that you crave power. It is like I told you before, child. All creatures desire power even if they do not necessarily have a need for it straight away. Power is the force most believe in because without it, they can never achieve their deepest desires, and become nothing more than shadows that fade away. Those who have power can perform great miracles, and perhaps influence others.
Ganondorf answered.
Why do you want me to embrace power? You are special, child. I have seen many like you over the millennia. Most of them ended up being disappointments who failed to live up to the expectations I had hoped, yet you happen to be one of the few who has proven worthy. It takes one who has seen both light and dark to be able to achieve true power. I can show you a way that will give you not only power, but also the ability to allow you to fulfill your deepest wishes. You need not change your form, for it is sufficient enough, yet you must cast aside everything you know and love. The path to true power involves removing weakness and salvaging the strong.
Ganondorf answered.
No.
I announced, grabbing his arm and pulling it off my shoulder.
Have you chosen to defy me? I've been through a lot of things since Princess Twilight gave me a second chance. I had plenty of moments where I wanted to give up and embrace for the power that I lost when my friends brought me back to my senses.
I answered. My grip on Ganondorf's hand caused him to wince a little, surprising me, yet I wasn't about to let go.
I even wanted to run away from everything. I was being immature and believed that I had lost everything. I found my epiphany and I knew I couldn't succumb to despair and be ruled by my past. Despite still having some lingering doubts, what I did was in the past and it no longer defines the kind of person I am. This power. Where are you getting this power from? It's something you will never understand. It took me a long time to finally embrace the magic of friendship, and I had plenty of help from my friends, my family. I'm afraid that you failed in your desire to turn me back to who I was in the past, someone who cared only for herself and for power. The future for me is bright thanks to knowing that it's something I won't have to face on my own.
I answered. I'll admit that my choice of words could have been better, but the point still stood in that Ganondorf had failed to persuade me to accept power as the one thing I needed to prove myself worthy of anything. Magic began to swell inside of me and I could feel it wanting to come out and show him that there was another way. He had spent his entire life seeking power because he wanted to stand above everyone else. He cared nothing for those he crushed on his path. That's the kind of person I could never become. With a flick of my wrist, I threw Ganondorf back where he landed, his feet kicking up the concrete of the floor leaving behind a trail. The hatred in his eyes was intense as he ran forward, his sword glowing indicating that it was being fueled by the dark aura coming from him. I raised my sword in response and began repelling each strike he made, each blow grew stronger and stronger as he was determined to bring me down. It looked like I was going to be overwhelmed by his might but I quickly turned the tables by slashing him in the stomach several times, each hit apparently weakening him until he dropped to one knee followed by the other one. Part of me still didn't want to kill him despite his actions because it meant embracing the darkness, but my heart knew that my actions were justified. Those like Ganondorf were beyond being capable of saving. His heart was far too twisted for any kind of warmth to appear and allow him to seek a better path. The only option was to strike him down and end it. I moved my arm back and waited for him to stand up. I wasn't going to let him lose his dignity and when he did, I lunged my arm forward, my sword going right through him in a blaze of light that represented the magic of friendship, and just like that, it was over. Ganondorf stood there, my sword in his chest, but he wasn't about to get the satisfaction of pulling it out himself in a final glory. Instead, I pulled it out, blood dripping down onto the ground, and he dropped onto both knees before falling flat on his face. In that instant, I breathed heavily, wiped the blood off my sword, and dropped to my knees.
Sunset?
Twilight said.
He's dead.
I said. I picked up the sword that he dropped after he slumped to the ground, gripped it firmly in both hands, raised my leg, and broke the sword in two upon it, connecting with my knee before tossing it aside.
I can't believe you did that. I know it's difficult for you to understand, Twilight, but it was a choice that I had to make. I've been in this situation so often that it's become second nature, but know that I didn't want to have to do this. He forced me into this conflict through all that taunting he did, but perhaps it was meant to be.
I said. I looked at my sword hand and the mark of the Triforce appeared on the back of it, glowing brightly for several seconds before disappearing as quickly as it appeared.
If you're wondering what that was just now, Twilight, I'll give you an explanation once we get back to Termina. We still have work to do there. There is more to this than what you're saying, isn't there? What I told you about in my report may not have been everything. Because I didn't know all of the details, but I think I'm starting to understand. You've got plenty of time to explain it to me, Sunset. For now, we need to figure out how to get back to where we need to be. I think we should search through this fortress again in case we may have missed.
Twilight said. She suddenly froze on the spot before starting to shiver as though something had scared her. I scratched my head wondering what had gotten her worried, and that was when I felt a tremendous pain go through my stomach. I looked down and discovered what appeared to be a trident had protruded through my stomach. Blood gushed forth from the wound, my body going numb upon realizing what had just happened. I tried to say something, but I found that I couldn't. My body then slumped forward and became lifeless, Ganondorf's laughter echoing behind me as he gripped the trident that had gone through my body, Her Highness looking on in absolute terror. I thought I had killed him but he lived and had killed me. End of chapter.